Book 2, welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. Now, I am sorry I haven't filmed a video lately since the Christmas haul video, although after I filmed that and uploaded it, I was thinking I should change it to like December book haul or something, December haul or something. But it doesn't matter. So, I might film 2 videos today. So I'm gonna get through these quick because I want to do them before it gets too dark because I like to, I go running for exercise and not at the gym around our neighborhood, so I gotta get out there before it gets dark. So I'm gonna do the Bookish Survey, the 2009 edition. Let's go. Okay. So, question number 1. Best book you read in 2009. In 19. Not the 2019 edition in the best book you read in 2019. Okay, so I think I had a hard time with picking a lot of these answers, so I just kind of picked one that I really love, a book that I really loved, and not say a book that I always say. And that is M.L. Rio's If We Were Villains. And it took me a while to actually find this book. I ended up, luckily I didn't have to order it offline, but, my Booksmellion is kind of small, so it doesn't have a huge selection. Not like the one I had, not like the Booksmellion in Waldorf, but, this one it took a while before it showed up, or at least the paperback edition, and the hardback wasn't there either. And that's actually the one, I gotta admit, I kind of like that cover a little bit better because I like the whole Hamlet skull on it. I thought that image was a lot more interesting, but this still represents what this is about because it has to do with it's a theater thing. But this is basically a kind of it's a murder mystery, and it's been compared to The Secret History by Donna Tartt because it has a similar plot. This story of a group of friends who are, like in The Secret History, they are obsessed with one particular subject, and that, in this case, is the theater, particularly Shakespeare. And they're so into it, they basically become the roles that they play in Shakespeare. And one of their own ends up getting murdered, like in A Secret History. And the book starts with they've caught the murderer, Oliver, but the detective who was on the case is starting to think that maybe Oliver was never the guilty one, and he wants to hear the real story as Oliver once promised him. And Oliver is finally getting out of prison, and the detective who's getting ready to retire decides to talk to the boy and get the whole story about what happened and what led up to this murder. And that is essentially what the rest of the plot is, basically him telling the story about those events. And first of all, the fact that this is a theater, the setting is the theater, and I was definitely a plus. It was one of my key words that drew me into the story, that it was about, these people who are passionate about theater. And for the longest time, I was around a lot of those type of people. Now, I don't think they're as bad as these characters are, but they're still kind of, at times, a little snobby and arrogant and just play, create a little bit neurotic and playful, and theater people have very unique personalities. They're very outgoing people, and like I said, they're not as bad as these people, but see a glimmer of these people in the people that I know, that I grew up meeting and being around. Plus, it's I like murder mysteries. I just don't like the ones where there's I just don't like the ones where it's about the detective solving the case. I mean, with the exception of I'm still interested in reading some Sherlock Holmes mystery. Some of the Agatha Christie mysteries are interesting too. I don't mind. I'm kind of interested in detective stories that are historical. like 19th century, early 20th century detectives, not today, you know, with the whole cop procedural stuff. To me, that's kind of boring. And so so that was another thing, and it was not from the detective's perspective. It was from the people that were involved in the murder, that the people that were not just the person who committed the murder, but all the characters that were connected to the murder and the victim. It's from their point of view, particularly the kid that gets framed for the murder. They also have a little bit of LGBTQ rep in here too, and just I like reading stories about, like, I know a lot of people can't stand reading about people that are a bit pompous and arrogant and snobby, and there's another word for it that I'm trying to think of. But I kind of like reading about those rich, arrogant, snobby people. It's very entertaining because, you know, you just are amused by them and their antics and the things that they talk about, and it's like fascinating. It's just like why some people love watching shows like the Kardashians, because it's just so interesting and fascinating watching these people, whether their lives are a train wreck or not. So that is that one. Okay, so that is what I picked for the best one for 2019. Okay, so question number 2, book that you were excited about and thought you were going to love, but didn't. Now, I didn't think I was going to love this book, but I didn't think I was going to, like, not like it either. I thought it was going to be, you know, it sounded interesting, and it was a library book, so I don't have it. And that is The Sisters of the Winter Wood. I don't remember the author's name, but it's basically about these two sisters, and they were born as shapeshifters. One could turn into a bear, and the other sister could turn into a swan. And this stems from the fact that their parents could do that. And this whole transformation of different animals also was a symbolic for that their mom was a Christian and their dad was Jewish. And eventually and this comes from the description because I didn't, and what I've heard other reviewers say, because I ended up DNFing this book. What ends up happening is these mysterious guys show up, and they put the sister that can turn into a swan under their spell. And there's something to, like, they're goblins or something, but they're transformed to human, to look like humans. And I was a little disappointed by this book. Like, the concept sounded kind of interesting, like the idea of these girls shape-shifting into animals and having to deal with that. And the whole religious aspect was very interesting. But it just it started to get boring after a while. It was like, and it's really hard for me to read slow books, especially like slower moving books, especially if they're library, if I got them from the library. It seems like I make that mistake a lot, and I need to stop that. But I just seen the book and it sounds interesting, so I'm like, oh, I want to get that. And, but I'm not sure if I want to buy it, so if it's at the library, then I'll borrow it from the library, and then I'll decide. But it mostly focused on them being like, the one girl freaking out, which I was okay with that part. The one girl freaking out because she turns into a bear. And then the other sister, and she's very overprotective of her sister. And then you have the other sister who's kind of dumb. And a little too trusting, in my opinion. And they're both boy crazy, obsessed about boys. And, like, the one sister, the more cautious sister's like, I better stay away from the boys because I might hurt them. And I gotta keep my secret, the fact they can turn into a bear. And then the other one, oh, let's just have fun. And I think she was in denial about who she was, that she could turn into a swan. And she was like all upset, no, it's not, I'm gonna pretend it's not the case, and I'm gonna go flirt with boys. And granted, they're teenage girls, but I'm also, and that's what I'm getting when I read books about when I read YA books. And, I still believe that you can read YA and still enjoy it, even if you're way past that age like me. Or you can also, like, I think most of the time fantasy, I think, can make it a little more interesting and more engaging, and less like eye roll reading. I did think at first, I did kind of think the whole idea was kind of cool that the one sister that could turn into a swan because she's so free spirited and want to fly with the wind and all that. The whole idea of her chapters being written in stanzas or in poetry format. At first I thought that was kind of cool, but then going through each chapter, when it's from her perspective, all it is basically taking the words in the story and turning them in, framing them like a poem. So there's no flow to it, there's no rhyme. Now, I know that not every form of poetry has to rhyme, but there has to be some sort of flow to it. It's basically just reading the sentences, but they're in poem form. And it's like, what was the point of this if you're just gonna basically, you're basically saying the same thing? Like, I mean, I guess she figured it wouldn't make sense to try to make it like an actual poem, because then people wouldn't understand it. So I guess that's what she's trying to do. So it's a little it's kind of risky, because if you're going to do that, I mean, it's a cool creative decision, but at the same time, it's like, can you do it in a way that doesn't just sound like you're reading her chapter, but it's just in a different format? Can you do it in a way so it still looks like it still sounds and flows like a poem? And it did not flow. It was not lyrical at all. So I wasn't thinking, oh, I'm going to love this. I was just thinking, oh, this sounds kind of cool. I'm going to check it out. But it was disappointing. So I was like, but not like devastatingly disappointed, because like I said, I was just trying it out and I didn't buy the book. I mean, that's why I've been using my library. The problem with my library doesn't always have the biggest selection. Like, I was hoping to borrow the Wayward Children series by Seanan McGuire from the library, and it was not there. So they only had one book, Seanan McGuire's newest book, which I did get. Okay, so next question is question number 3: most surprising book you read. And I ended up picking the one that normally I say is my favorite of the year, and that is Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Sorry, I still cannot figure out. I need to listen. I need to hear it pronounced. So I wasn't sure if I would like this book. I've heard a lot of good things about this. Is one of the more popular classics. People, in fact, like it better than some of his other works. But I didn't, so I wasn't. It was more like I just wasn't sure if I was gonna love it or not. But I ended up getting this desire to read it. So I started it in 2018, I want to say, but that was not the best time to start it, because not the year itself, but when the physical day I started reading it. It was during trivia night at my store, and it was not the best time because there were too many distractions, and it's a classic, so the writing style is going to be a little more challenging for someone who's read a lot of YA in their lifetime. This is about a Russian classic about the student who, he's broke essentially. He's poor, he can't pay his rent, and he decides out of desperation to come up with a plan to murder someone so he can get the money, so he can get enough money. And he decides to murder a female pawnbroker. And he's hesitant at first, but then he ends up succeeding in killing her. But the rest of the book is basically him dealing with the aftermath of that, worrying that he's going to get caught because there is a detective who's on the case, and trying to debate, should he turn himself in, or am I going to get caught even if I don't say anything? Is my friend going to figure it out? And then on top of that, he's dealing with personal family issues because he's found out from a letter from his mom that his sister is being blackmailed by this guy this married man who harassed her and is now blackmailing her. and then later when she gets to, and then eventually another, I don't remember what his connection was, what his part in all this, but there was another guy that also tried to blackmail his sister into marriage. And it's him trying to deal with that while also dealing with the fact that he murdered someone. And this was so fascinating, engaging story. I just wanted to keep going. It's only $12.95. That's right. I remember it being not too expensive. I need to look at my other ones, other Barnes and Noble editions. Sorry, I almost dropped my notebook. It's just I was just so engaged with the story, and I wanted to know what was gonna happen. Was Raskolnikov, the main character, was he gonna turn himself in? Was he gonna get caught? What was gonna happen with his sister? Was she gonna be forced to marry one of these guys? Is her brother gonna save her? And there was also a bit of a love story with Raskolnikov and this woman that I think she was a prostitute that he kind of befriends and tries to help out because her family's very poor, and I just wanted to know I just was so eager to know what was going to happen to the characters, and and it does get philosophical. I know a lot of people, I know a lot of people aren't fans of him when he gets all philosophical and stuff, which I hope that doesn't, I found out that Jennifer Brooks is one of my new favorite booktubers. Well, not that new, I discovered her, I think, back in 2018. She's gonna read this book, and I know she's hesitant because part of it is because of how philosophical Dostoevsky gets. So I really hope she likes it, because I feel like a lot of times we do have a lot of book interest in common. But so yeah, for me it was a very interesting and engaging classic. Okay, question number 4. Now this one I don't actually have an answer because I can't even remember. I don't usually push books on people, but I do sometimes push books on my friends. And I do not remember what books I pushed on my friends. I think, I try not to, but because I'm worried that one day, because I don't like it when they push books on me. So I'm I don't want to be a hypocrite and push books on them, so I try not to. But there are occasions where there are books that, if, my friend might actually like this, it sounds like her kind of book. Well, I guess with, Terry Johnson, I've tried to push some I tried to push some Stephen King books on her, I thought were interesting, and then I think I always thought that my friend Larissa, my best friend Larissa, I always believed that she would like some of the books, like the Renegades trilogy, and Ambitious, because she likes the superhero movies, and Renegades kind of reminds me of X-Men and Avengers a little bit. So really that's all I really got for that question. And I don't have, you can't really answer the other part of the question, which is, and they did, as in, did they read the books you pushed on them? Okay, question number 5. Best series you started, best sequel, and best series ender. I haven't ended any, well, actually, no, I could say, because this is really the only series I ended this year. But let me first answer the first 2 parts. Best series you started. Well, since the other series that I started, I only read the first book, so I'm not going to include that one. And that was, the Seven Realms series. But I'm going to go ahead and say The Keeper of the Lost Cities. This is book 6 of that series. I don't have the other ones because, as you can tell, it's a library purchase. I mean, not purchase, borrowed from the library. This is book 6. And I've just loved this book series throughout the whole thing. I mean, middle grade is very fun. It's such a fun. I mean, there are some frustrations, and I have to remind myself, okay, this is written for younger people, for preteens. Okay, not 30-year-old girls, for young women, 30-year-old women who still like reading young adult. It's for So there are some minor irritations because it's written for younger readers. Other than that, this series, along with the first book in the Morgan Crow series, are just so fun. I haven't read the second one in that one. I didn't read the second one this year, but I did buy it, so I have it. And I need to read it soon because I know Hollowpox, the third book in that series, is coming out this year. But this was the best series to start. The first book was great in this series. I've so far loved every book, so best sequel. And then the only series that I've ended this year. Let me see if I can find. There it is. Which I don't remember if this was the only series I ended was this series, the Dragon Rider Chronicles series. This is just, again, this is another fun middle grade series that I absolutely just loved. I'm gonna give these when Harrison and Daniel, and maybe the third kid, because she is having a third kid, are old enough, I'm gonna pass these books on to them as well, because it's just a fun series about fantasy series about, a kid who is half elf, half human, and he ends up getting into a school for dragon riders who are like the soldiers of the world that they come from. And he gets trained to be a dragon rider and gets caught up in this war between the elves and the humans, and it's such a fun series. And this is the fourth book the last book in the series, Immortal. And it was really cool because this one was because of what happens to the main character in the third book. This one starts out in the perspective of another character. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I thought that made it really cool that we got another character's point of view. Because mostly we've stuck with the first three books, we stuck with the one main character. So this one added a unique spin. And of course, this is probably the most epic one in the series, or as epic as you're gonna get in a middle grade series. So yeah, that's really the only series I ended this year. Okay. I think actually, I think this might have been 2008. I might not be able to count this. This might have been 2018 series. I'll have to double check that. But you know what? I can cheat. Okay, so favorite new author you discovered. Okay, so technically I've already read a book by this author once 4 years ago. I did a buddy read, but I went ahead and picked Oscar Wilde this year. And this is the book we read before, and I rebought it. Oh, so it's $4.95. So these Barnes & Noble classics are actually cheap. And this is a collection of his plays. So Oscar Wilde is just a guy he's an Irish author. I believe he's also gay, actually. But of course he was in a time where you couldn't really be open with that, unfortunately. Like, at least today now, you can be open with it. You might still receive some judgment, and some people, straight, conservative people, might be a little uncomfortable with it. But, and there's still hate, unfortunately, in the world, but at least it's not as bad. But anyway, we're not gonna go there anymore. And he writes satire. He writes all the satirical plays and commenting on English society. He's kind of like Dickens does. And this is just, his plays are really fun and silly. We read 2 of his plays this year. I read 2 of his plays for Victober this year, the group reads. One of them I was already familiar with, and that was The Importance of Earnest. But I had seen clips of the movie. I kind of knew a little bit about that one. And then the other one we read was A Woman of No Importance, which that was a little more dramatic and serious. It still had humor, of course. And then I decided to rebuy this one, The Picture of Dorian Gray, which, it's spelled with an A, not an E. So, which is about this guy who's told by one of his friends who paints his portrait that he is the most beautiful young man he's ever seen. So he kind of makes a deal with the devil and is allowed to live never age, but his portrait will age, and it basically reflects his sins. But I like Oscar Wilde, and I wish I had not gotten rid of the other, because I had a mass market paperback edition of this novella, but with some of his other novellas in it. So I wish I hadn't gotten rid of that one, but at the time I was thinking, oh, I'm not gonna read this again. I mean, yeah, the story was interesting, but I wasn't into it at the time. Okay, so next is, so that was question number 6. Question number 7. Best book from a genre you don't typically read, was out of your comfort zone, and this is one that I don't have. It's one of the first books I read. And that was Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil by John Byrne. I'm not sure if I'm saying his last name correctly. But it is a true crime, so it's nonfiction. I don't read a lot of nonfiction, but it's basically about this guy, this writer, who essentially goes to, I think, Savannah, Georgia, and he ends up falling in love with the town of Savannah, and his true crime is about how he fell in love with the town of Savannah, and how he got caught up in the middle of this case, this murder case, and he is observing this case the whole time and trying to stay as an observer and not getting mixed up in it. But he kind of becomes friends with the people involved in the case unconsciously, like he was already friends with them first. And it became this whole big media thing, and to the point where they had to go, the guy who was on trial as the murderer, they took his case to court 3 times, and then it was the 3rd time, and by the 3rd time they had to take it to another county or state just so that the jury wouldn't be biased. So it's very interesting, and it's written like a story, even though it's a true crime. It's written like I'm reading a story, which I feel like I like with nonfiction. It's easier for me to read if it's like a memoir, or if it's a story like written, if it's a nonfiction written like a story. But it also has to be something I'm kind of interested in. It has to be something that I'm interested, like a subject that I'm interested in. Question number 8. Most action-packed, thrilling, unputdownable book of the year. And I don't have it, but I ended up picking the book that was right before this one, Lodestar. And, like, all the books in the series I feel are unputdownable. And it does help that because it's written for middle grade, the chapters are shorter and to the point and not so wordy. It does make it go by a lot faster, but I just kept having to read the next chapter, and it made the way it was written, it made it easy to want to keep going and read the next chapter. And that's why I go through these so quickly. And I'm almost done with it. I have there's 90 chapters in it, so I'm on chapter 57, so I'm almost, because it was one of these situations where I was like, okay, do I read another chapter? Or do I get on the computer for a little bit before I have to go to work? So I decided to read another chapter, and then I had a little bit I could at least start a video. So, yeah, basically all the books in the series are unputdownable. And I've read at least, I don't know if I started the series this year. In 2019, I read, with the exception of this one, I guess I read the first 5 books in 2019. Okay, so question number 9. Book you read in 2019 that you most likely reread next year. Now, I had difficult with this one, so I ended up not answering this one because I don't know what books I'll reread this year. And I feel like, yeah, I could pick one that I really love that I would be tempted to read this year. But I always feel like like, there's so many new books or backlist books that I haven't got to yet that I feel like, oh, I should not be rereading any books right now. I was feeling, I'd like feel guilty. So I feel like I can't take the time to reread a book I've already read. But I decided, because when I was thinking about that question, I decided last night, okay, I need to attempt to reread The Night Circus again. And not because it's a hard book to read, or I realized as soon as I started reading that I didn't like it, because it was more like I had started it, but then I got sidetracked by other books. So finally I decided to, if I make sure to put it in Goodreads that I have started this book, then it will motivate me to keep going with it. Because, again, it's not that I'm not interested, that I love the book the first time, and this was way before book 2, or Goodreads, before I even came across it. So, I know I loved it then, and I definitely think I would need to read a little bit more before I decide, for me to determine if I'm gonna still love it or not love it anymore. Okay, so I don't have an answer for that one, because I don't know. And that Night Circus is not one that I read this year. So favorite, it's not one that I read in 2019. Okay, question number 10. Favorite book cover of 2019. Oh, that's right. Oh, well, I can't show you. Okay. Well, then I shouldn't pick that one, then. I forgot. That was one that... So, I can't. That was a bad choice. Okay, so... Okay, well, since I already have it here, let me just go ahead and... Okay, I'll just go ahead with this one, since I already have it here. This I'm going to use for a different question, but I'm also going to use it for this question. I loved this cover. It was so awesome. Like, I loved raised covers. Like, covers that you can feel the picture. Like, it's not just flat, but it's a little raised. And it's gold and shiny, and the scar across the shield and you can see the eagle wings, because that's Nikolai's crest. And I loved all the covers, and especially the new covers for the Grisha trilogy. I mean, I was cool with the other ones, but the new covers, see if you could see them right here. Like, I like the original answer I was gonna give was Crooked Kingdom. But I ended up donating it because, yes, I enjoyed the series, but I want someone else to enjoy it, and I don't know if I'll ever reread it again. I love the Six of Crows duology covers. And that's the Crooked Kingdom was the original answer I was gonna give, because it's cool with the giant crow, and then you have buildings within its wings, and the Languid of Thorns cover is really pretty too. That picture of all the fairy tales on the cover for the fairy tale collection. This is just so beautiful. I know a lot of people have issues with this book and didn't love it, but I mean, you gotta admit the cover's really pretty. Okay, so I'm gonna come back to that book for another answer. Okay, so question number 11, most memorable character of 2019, and I said Geralt of Rivia. It kind of reminded me of Buffy, a little bit like a male version of Buffy. And, like, it's like Buffy meets... It's like has Buffy's job, but has the personality of Angel. Although, he's not as, like, a stick in the mud as Angel can be sometimes. But this is Geralt is from the series, the Witcher series, and he's a monster hunter. He slays monsters for a living, and he's just so snarky and sarcastic, and he's just like, he doesn't give a rat's ass what anyone thinks. He's so used to people not liking him, being afraid of him because he's a Witcher. Sometimes innocents get caught in the crossfire of his job, and he's just doing his job. And he's just so snarky and funny about it, and I like him. Like I said, his personality similar to Angel's from Buffy, but he's also, like, but he's a little more interesting to watch. Okay, so question number 12, most beautifully written. And I said, where is it? Where did I put it? Oh crap, where did I put it? Oh, there it is. I put Hidden Sea by Gregory Maguire. It's written like a fairy tale. It's so beautifully written. I mean, it's not confusing at times, but it's very lyrical, and that sometimes can make it confusing, but it's just like such an interesting story, and like I said, it's like reading a fairy tale. And I love fairy tale writing. I feel like that can be very lyrical, especially when you make it more adult. Okay. Most thought-provoking, life-changing book 2019. Again, just like when I did this I think I did this 2 years ago. I didn't have an answer for that one because it's just, I don't know. I feel bad that I don't have a book that changed my life or was thought-provoking, but I can't think of an answer for it. Book you can't believe you waited until 2019 to finally read. And I ended up picking Misery by Stephen King. I've read 4 books by Stephen King this year. I'm hoping to read more, like maybe double that, so 8. But this is about this writer, Paul Sheldon. He writes this commercial series called Misery, so he's very successful. It making him very successful. But at this point, he's tired of it. He's done. He wants to write something more he's more passionate about. So he writes the last book and kills off the main character. But some of his fans are not happy about that. And he ends up crashing his car while he's driving through the Colorado Rockies in the winter time, and is rescued by his number 1 fan, Annie Wilkes, who essentially holds him hostage and tries to nurse him back to health. And then is like, you know what? I'm going to keep you here, and you're going to write a book for me about misery, and you're going to bring the character back. And she pretty much tortures him, and it's a bit gross and squeamish at times, and it's just very, like, crazy, and it just really reflects how, and it's kind of scary because she is a fangirl, and a lot of us are fans of things, and not that all of us would go, hopefully anyway, we wouldn't go to the extremes that she goes to, but she's also a little crazy. She's mentally unstable, not just a neurotic fangirl, but something's not right up here. I love this. I mean, I think this is my favorite over Pet Sematary. It's just such an interesting and squeamish story, and yeah, I love it. It's one of and the villain, Annie Wilkes, it's also, like, I think what makes this such a great story is she's so human. She's a human. She's a woman. She doesn't have any supernatural power. She's not a physical monster. She's just a human that has feelings and thinks and feels, and she doesn't focus, on just her instincts. She's very complicated. Okay, so question number 15, favorite passage/quote. I don't have one for that one either. 16, shortest and longest book you read. Okay, shortest, I don't have it, but I borrowed from the library a collection of Dickens' short stories, and that was actually a DNF, but they are short stories, so I read some of them. And the shortest one, of course, is Mr. Minns and His Cousin, which is about, I don't even remember what it's about. The short stories are just okay. They weren't anything special. Okay, now, as far as the longest book, I just picked what I thought, because Goodreads, the longest book Goodreads that I read was one I DNF'd, and that was The Goldfinch. And I didn't even get halfway in that book, so I feel like I couldn't count it as the longest book I read. So I just picked one that I thought might be one of the longest, and that is Mouse by John Gwynne. It's a epic fantasy. I'm not going to even bother telling you what this guy. I'm sorry, Matt, because I can't really sum up what this is about. So, I mean, it's not super complicated, but I always struggle with summing up epic fantasy books. So anyway, but I may struggle with summing up, but I did love the book, and it's coming in at 628 pages. So it might not be the longest book I read, but maybe it is the longest book I've finished. But anyway, so yeah, that's the longest book. It's a good series. It's fun. It's a fun series. Definitely recommend checking it out for epic fantasy. Okay, so book that shocked you the most. I don't have that one. I guess in a way, Misery kind of disturbed me a little bit. Kind of like, oh my god, wow. So I guess Misery could be my answer for that one. Favorite OTP year. Okay, here's where King of Scars come in again. I don't know if this is the reason why people have a problem with this book, but I loved Soya and Nikolai. They were so cute together, and I was so shipping them so hard. Problem is, the book does not end up with them together, but this is gonna get a sequel. Of course, watch. She'll turn this into a trilogy like a lot of authors seem to be doing. But yeah, I love Nikolai and Zoya. At first, part of me kind of wanted Nikolai to end up with Alina, but I knew that wasn't gonna happen. That was never gonna happen because I think Alina's heart is with Mal. I know some people don't like Mal, but it's the character. Leigh Bardugo wrote the character to love Mal. You may not like him, but remember, you're not the character. I feel like sometimes we forget that. Especially if we ship them with a different character that is not the endgame, but we all know that they're not the endgame, so it's like, when we find out, we're not happy, and we kind of forget, and we kind of think, oh, she should end up with this guy, when really it's like, well, yeah, maybe that guy's better for her, but he's not the guy that character wants, or vice versa, it's not the gal that the guy wants. But let's face it, mostly is, the situation where the main character is the female, but they are so fun together, and they get each other, they understand each other, they can deal with each other, because there are things about their personalities that can be irritating at times, and those are some of the best people that connect, and they understand each other, they help each other, they balance each other out, the two of them balance each other out quite nicely. And there's just moments where I'm wondering, is Leigh Bardugo trying to paint them as liking each other? That there is an attraction and they have feelings for each other, but they know they can't be together? I mean, I don't know if that's the intention she did, but that's what it felt like. So I ship them so hard together. They're so cute. Okay, so favorite non-romantic relationship of the year. Okay, and I picked, so I'm bringing up this series again, and I picked Javid Broadfeather and Felix Farrow. These two are adorable together. They are just such a great team. They kind of remind me a little bit of Harry and Ron at times. You have the brooding main character as the weight of the world on his shoulders, and but Felix who is a bit of a, he's a flirt, he's fun, he's laid back, he's easygoing, he's a goofball, and they balance each other out so well, they're so good for each other, and they really care about each other, and support each other, and even though Javid he's half elf, half human, Felix doesn't care. He just likes Jay as a person. As in, he's cool with him. He thinks, even when Jay was someone that people can easily bully in the first book, he still was like, I'm cool with you. I like you, and I'm gonna be your friend, and I'll help you out. And and they had such a strong bond in the series, and they are very protective of each other. And their friend, and of course, some of the best friendships always have good humor between the two friends, and they do. And like I said, I think, although before I give this to my nephews to read, I got a few years to go, but I'm definitely gonna read it again at some point before I give it to them. But I hope that they really like the series. But yeah, I love them and their friendship, and Felix is so entertaining and fun, and they're just, and like I said, they balance each other out really well. Like I said, they remind me a little bit of Ron and Harry from Harry Potter. So it's 4 books, by the way, and it just came out. She wrote a prequel that just came out, but I don't remember what it's called. But it was kind of cool because I got those in 2017 or 2017. I think I got those. It's one of the few series that I've gotten from. I think that's why I don't entirely give up on the idea of buying series from conventions, because there's actually some of them that are like actual book series. I'm not like talking comic books, but okay. So favorite book you read from an author you read previously, and I said Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. And I had read A Tale of Two Cities a few years ago, and I really liked it. It was my first Dickens, and although I have been exposed, I never read the actual book, but I had been exposed to A Christmas Carol, because of course most people have, because around Christmas time you're bound to come across at least one adaptation. Like, whether it's the Muppet Christmas Carol, the one starring Sir Patrick Stewart, or there's the black and white one. There's a musical one with Kelsey Grammer. There's the Mickey Mouse one. There's one that came out a few years ago by Disney starring Jim Carrey. That was a computer-generated version, which, although I don't think that's everyone's favorite, because they think the computer thing is a bit too much. And unfortunately, that's the only thing that's a little different about it, is that it's a computer version, the animation is computer-made animation, and that's what makes it stand out among the others. It's different, because everyone's familiar with the story, and because it's been adapted so many times, so you gotta do something that makes it a little different. And then, or you've seen there's another anime one that has nothing to do with Disney that came out, and I know of that one because Kate Winslet did the love theme of that one. Yes, the Kate Winslet. She can sing. But anyway, back to this. So I'm familiar with 2 Dickens, and finally decided I need to read another one. So I started collecting his books, and I decided to start with this one because this one of the Kate from Books and Things said that this is a good place to start with Dickens. And even though I had read A Tale of Two Cities, I felt like I need to kind of start over with him a little bit and read something a little less challenging. Still, of course, it's not like the writing style is different, but it is in first-person perspective. It's about this young man named Pip, who his parents died, so he's kind of raised by his sister and her husband, and she is basically mean to him. She treats him like crap. But somehow, miraculously, he ends up inheriting some great expectations, as in money, that makes him really, really rich. And it's all about how that affects him and how it changes him. And that's what it's about, basically. It's a little more, I think it's a little more interesting than that. I mean, Dickens novels are always, I think, very interesting. It's just sometimes the writing style makes it harder to get into them for some people. Of course, I could be wrong there. But it's And another plot is another S. Sorry, rewind. So when he also is coming into contact with this elderly woman who kind of takes him on to introduce him to society, and to be her like plaything, and she introduces him to this little girl who she takes as her ward and raises her. And Pip immediately falls in love with this girl, even though she's a snobby little brat and treats him horribly, which comes from how the older woman raised her. So that woman is a very horrible woman too. Although you do feel sorry for her. And that's the other part of the plot. I know it's not for everybody, but I thought it was so interesting, Pip's journey. Now, I will admit that Pip can be an irritating character to be in the head of, because he's kind of an idiot, and he becomes very selfish and vain person when he gets rich. But still a very interesting and good place to start with Dickens, as Kate from Books and Things said. Okay, so next is best book you read in 2019 that you read solely on recommendation. And I went ahead and just said it wasn't a direct recommendation, but I'm trying to think of who talks about this. I want to say, I can't remember which booktuber talks about this the most. But The Lives of Locke Lamora, a lot of booktubers that I love watching have talked about this book quite a bit. It's about this young man who is a master thief, and he has a crew that goes on all these missions to steal from these rich people, and so he's kind of like a Robin Hood figure. And it's all about, we go back and forth between the present situation where they're going on this major heist presently, and we also get the perspective of, we see his childhood and how he learned to become the thief that he is today. And I am reading the second book. I did not finish it this year, but I am reading it currently. And that's Red Seas Under Red Skies. And then while I'm holding this up, newest fictional crush, I said Locke from Lives of Locke Lamora. I just love Locke. First of all, it's so awesome that I finally can read the appeal of definitely finally reading books that are with main characters that are my age, or at least close to my age, is that it's not, I don't feel as weird like having a crush on those type of characters that are, I don't feel weird if I have a crush on that character, because, it's kind of weird if you have a crush, if you're, in your 20s or 30s and you kind of crush on a 16-year-old boy. It's a little like, but there's a term for that. But, now, although I should say though, the whole, I've been really obsessing over the characters and the magicians, but I didn't actually read the book, because I feel like that would be a little bit of a cheat, because I'm going by the TV show. And it's more that I kind of like the actor who played Elliot. And, and the thing is, Elliot's also gay, so it's a little like, he doesn't like women anyway, the character. So, but then, I can't help it though. The actor who plays him makes him very likable, very crushable. Also I imagine that Lev Grossman's writing also makes him very lovable too. At least I think so. I would hope so. But yeah, Locke, he's charming and he's fun. He's even though he's a bit of a criminal, he can be a bit of a douchebag to people. He's still just, you can't help but love him and root for him. And also like his best friend Jean. I like him too. Okay. Alright. I went ahead and picked for best debut. For me, I was not disappointed by this book, as a lot of people were. So I picked Wicked Saints by Emily A. Duncan. I think this is her debut. I like the story. I know a lot of people didn't like it, they felt that the romance was a bit insta-lovey, and although the couple I'm rooting for, the people I'm rooting for to be the end game, I feel like they're not a couple yet, but I feel they're, so I feel like, oh no, it's not insta-love. But I don't know, I'm probably wrong. The author's probably aiming for the other couple to be the end game. I don't know. But this is so cool. This is basically about two groups of two countries, and one country uses blood magic and the other country uses god power. And one of our main characters, our main female character, let's see if I can, Nadia, can speak to the gods, and that's how she gets her magic. And she's she's a priestess. And she ends up being found by a group of rebels, and they go on a journey to the other kingdom for those who worship blood, who worship blood magic. And our two other main characters are the prince from the country that does blood magic. He doesn't like his father. The king doesn't agree with how he's running things. And then he's trying to evade assassins and desperate suitors. And then you have the other main character is this young man who he's referred to as a bit of a monster. And he's hiding behind his good looks. So I think this is he's kind of like the Darkling character, because people compare this to the Grisha trilogy. And I think, and mainly because surprisingly, I've only read some. Apparently I'm still unaware of a lot of tropes in fantasy, especially YA fantasy, because I didn't see what the people were talking about, because people said, oh, it took parts of all these other series. She didn't do anything original, but you know what? I think I thought it was really cool. And like I said, I like the blood magic concept, and this cover's really great too. And this year, her sequel to this book is coming out. I can't remember what it's called, but that one's coming out this year, so I'm excited to read it. Okay, so okay. Question number 24 and 25 are the same answer. Best world building. Again, Keeper of the Lost Cities was such a cool name. This whole elven city that our main character realizes she's a part of, and these very interesting concept in this world. It's just such a cool place, and I want to go there. This series is very, very much reminds me of Harry Potter, and Harry going into the wizarding world and being exposed to this world, and all it has a government, and all that, these animals, and it's just so much detail. And I'm sure there's plenty more detail that the author has filed away in her imagination. And I'm talking about Keeper of the Lost City series. But it's such a cool, I want to be part of that world. I want to go to the Lost Cities. I want to go, not the Lost Cities. The Lost Cities is the human world. I want to go to the city where she goes to and see the houses, because they have these really fancy, rich houses. Because when you're a kid, you essentially get a birth fund, so you get all this money. So everybody there is rich. I want to see the extravagant houses in all these cool cities, like Atlantis is in this story. And the whole idea of the elves were trying to make peace and bond with the humans, but then there were so many. That's my only issue, that whenever I read fantasy series where you're dealing with another fantasy world and they're criticizing humans, it's like, oh, come on, we're not that bad. As a human, I feel a little excuse me? Are we okay? We're not that bad. But then I can see the badness in these stories that they talk about. The problem is there's not all of us are that bad. Again, I've said that you should. And then, like I said, the question 25, most fun reading, and I also said that one. The Dragonborn Chronicles, I had fun reading that series too. But yeah, it's a great middle grade series. If you like reading middle grade, I recommend checking it out if you haven't yet. Okay, book that made you cry. I don't have one because for some weird reason I cannot cry in books. I need the visual. I need to be able to hear it, not just in my imagination, not just in my head, but actually hear it, like, are all around me. I need to hear it. I need to see it. I need to hear actors, not my own voice, saying the lines and acting out the sad part. I can't cry just reading words that describe it to me. Hidden Gem, I don't have an answer for that one because I can't think of one. I don't know how to answer questions, that kind of question. A book that crushed your soul. Another one I don't have an answer for. Most unique, and I just ended up picking We Were Villains again, because what the author did is, since it's centered around Shakespeare in the theater, the author has the book set up where, like, first I love the covers, like this paperback cover. I still like this cover, but I do prefer the hardback cover. So, like I said, I'm not one of those, but I don't even think they had the hardback in this case, so I didn't have a choice. I had to get the paperback. But, like, first part, Act 1, and then actually, here's a quote. Here's a good quote for the quote question. I sit with my wrist cupped to the table and I think, but that I am forbid to tell the secrets of my prison house. I could a tale unfold whose lightest words would harrow up thy soul. So it's like you have a prologue, and then the way when it gets in dialogue, some of the characters' thoughts are written like Shakespeare, like Shakespeare lines. And here's one of the other things. It's also written like this, like Scene 1. The only difference, it's written like a regular novel, but it's set up like a script, which I think is really cool. I think that the idea of considering, especially with what the story is, like what's the background of the story is Shakespeare in the theater. I love how the author chose to set it up like that. It fits the story. Okay, so best book that made you the most mad. I don't have one for that one. I'm trying to think if there's any. I did not read any last year that made me mad. I'm trying to think. I can't think of. I don't have an answer for that one. But anyway, so that is my Bookish Survey. I think this was the Bookish Survey is on a blog. So, I will find the link to it. And post it on there when I upload the video. So if you want to answer one of these questions or do the survey, feel free to do it. Or if you want to answer the questions, you can answer in the comment section below. Maybe you can tell me what is like the best book you read this year, and what is the worst book that you read this year. And if you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, click subscribe if you haven't already, and I hope you're enjoying your reading so far this year, and I will talk to you all later. Alright, bye!